Dylan, what would you do if your house burned down on Christmas Eve?
Okay, that's a very specific setup.
What would you do?
Cry, call my insurance company, eat my feelings.
What if 5 of your children were unaccounted for, but also no human remains were found anywhere in the rubble?
Then I would not be okay at all.
What if the ladder you kept by the house specifically to escape fires had mysteriously disappeared the night of the fire?
Okay, Cindy.
What if the phones didn't work? The fire trucks took almost an hour to arrive. The neighbor reported a man throwing what looked like a lit fuse ball at the house earlier that night, and 20 years later, someone mailed your family a photo of a young man who looked exactly like your missing son.
I would need you to stop talking immediately because this is clearly a real thing that happened.
It is a real thing that happened. Welcome back to Hilarious Media, everybody. I'm Cindy.
I'm Dylan, and Merry Christmas, I guess. Buckle up.
Okay, so let's set the scene. The Sodder family, Fayetteville, West Virginia, 1945. George Sodder was an Italian immigrant who came to America as a teenager, built a trucking business from nothing, and by the 1940s, he and his wife Jennie had 10 children together.
10 children.
10. And by all accounts, they were a genuinely happy, close-knit family, deeply Catholic, very community-oriented. George was known for being outspoken. He was not shy about his opinions. He had recently made some comments criticizing Mussolini, which is going to matter later.
Oh, good. A Mussolini thread. Love that for us.
It comes back around, I promise. So, Christmas Eve, 1945. The kids have been putting up decorations, there's a Christmas tree with lights, and the family goes to bed happy. George, Jennie, and 4 of the children are on the ground floor or in rooms they can easily escape from. The other 5, Maurice, who's 14, Martha, who's 12, Louis, who's 9, Jennie, who's 8, and little Betty, who's 5, are upstairs.
And this is the last night anyone definitively sees them.
This is the last night. Jennie, the mom, wakes up around 1 in the morning to the sound of someone on the phone. She goes back to sleep. A couple hours later, she wakes up again, and the house is on fire.
How fast did he go?
Fast. George tried to get upstairs, but the staircase was already engulfed. He and Jennie and 4 kids got out. They called for the 5 upstairs children. Nothing. The house burned completely to the ground.
And the remains?
When investigators went through the rubble the next day, nothing. No human remains. Not a single bone fragment. 5 children, completely gone.
That's not how fires work.
That is exactly what the Sodders said, and it is the beginning of this entire mystery. Okay, so let me just list the things that were weird about this fire, and Dylan, you just react in real time.
I'm ready.
The ladder George kept propped against the house, specifically to use as a fire escape, was not there the night of the fire.
Okay, misplaced. Possible.
When Jennie tried to call the fire department, the phone was dead.
Fire can knock out phone lines?
The fire department was less than 3 miles away and took almost an hour to arrive.
That's slower than ideal.
The neighbor reported that earlier in the evening, a man she didn't recognize was seen near the house and at one point appeared to throw something lit, like a fuse ball, at the structure.
Okay, that's less explainable.
The Christmas tree lights, which were being blamed as the fire's cause, had been unplugged before the family went to bed. George confirmed this.
So the official cause of the fire is already shaky.
Very shaky. And here's the one that gets me most. When investigators cleared the rubble, they found the cremation-level heat required to destroy 5 human bodies completely, bones, teeth, everything, would have required a sustained temperature far higher and longer than a typical house fire produces.
Meaning
It is genuinely unlikely that 5 children simply burned with no trace. Crematoriums use specific equipment and temperatures for hours to do what supposedly happened in this house fire overnight.
So either the fire was unusually intense,
Or the children weren't in the house when it burned.
okay, I'm on board. This is not a normal house fire.
George Sodder spent the rest of his life believing exactly that. He eventually had the property excavated properly years later, and investigators found a small piece of what appeared to be a liver, not burned, in the rubble, which raises more questions than it answers.
A liver?
Just hanging out in the rubble of a supposedly completely burned house. The county coroner said it was beef liver, possibly from garbage, but a pathologist later disputed that and said it was human.
So we have missing ladder, dead phones, slow fire department, a stranger throwing something at the house, no remains, and a mysterious liver?
And we haven't even gotten to the mafia angle yet.
Of course there's a mafia angle.
So, remember how I mentioned George had been publicly criticizing Mussolini?
The Mussolini thread. It's back.
It's back! In the Italian immigrant community in West Virginia in the 1940s, there was a local man, we'll call him the Collector, because he went around collecting money supposedly to send to Italy, who had come to the Sodder house and George had refused to pay and had essentially told him where to go.
So he stiffed the mob-adjacent guy.
He stiffed the mob-adjacent guy, and this man reportedly told George, and I'm paraphrasing, but this is documented, that his house would go up in smoke and his children would be scattered.
He literally threatened him.
He literally threatened him, and then within a year, the house went up in smoke and the children were scattered.
Okay, that is not a coincidence I can explain away.
Right? Now, the theory, and George believed this until he died, is that the 5 children were kidnapped, not killed, that the fire was set as a distraction or a cover, the children were taken, and they were either sold, trafficked, or kept somewhere by people connected to organized crime.
That is a deeply horrible theory.
It is, and it was shared enough that over the years, multiple people came forward claiming to be one of the Sodder children, or claiming to have seen them. Most were false leads, but then, 20 years later, something happened that made the whole thing impossible to dismiss.
The photo.
The photo. In 1967, 22 years after the fire, Jennie Sodder received an envelope in the mail. Inside was a photograph of a young man in his mid-20s. On the back, in handwriting, it said, "Louis Sodder, I love brother Frankie, ill boys, A90132."
What does any of that mean?
Nobody knows. No return address. The young man in the photo bore a strong resemblance to Louis Sodder, who would have been in his late 20s by then if he were alive.
Did they ever identify who sent it?
Never. The family hired a private investigator who went to the postmark city, Central City, Kentucky, and was never heard from again.
The PI disappeared?
Vanished. No one knows what happened to him either.
Cindy, this case just keeps adding layers.
It is an onion of tragedy, Dylan, an absolute onion. I want to take a second to talk about George and Jennie specifically because they are, honestly, one of the most heartbreaking parts of this whole story.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Like, the mystery is fascinating, but there's an actual grieving family at the center of it.
Exactly. George Sodder could not accept the official ruling that his children had died in the fire. He spent decades and a significant amount of his own money investigating. He put up a billboard on the main highway near Fayetteville with photos of the 5 children and what they might look like as adults. The billboard stayed up for years.
A billboard? He put up a billboard.
He needed people to see their faces. He needed someone to recognize them, and the community responded. Over the decades, hundreds of tips came in. Most led nowhere, but the family kept going.
Did they ever get any kind of closure?
George died in 1969 without answers. Jennie kept the investigation going after him. She eventually had the billboard taken down in the late 1960s, but she never stopped looking. She died in 1989. Their surviving children have continued the search into the modern era. As recently as 2011, the case was in the news again when investigators re-examined the liver fragment with updated forensic techniques.
And?
Inconclusive, of course.
Of course.
This case has never been conclusively solved. 5 children, no confirmed remains, no confirmed survivors, just a family that refused to stop looking.
All right, cards on the table. What do you actually think happened, Cindy?
I think the children were not in the house when it burned. I think the fire was deliberately set. I think it was connected to the threat George received, and I think those 5 kids were taken somewhere. Whether they survived long-term, I genuinely don't know, but I don't think they died in that fire.
The no remains thing is what gets me. I keep trying to logic my way around it, and I can't.
Right? Like, even in very intense house fires, investigators find something. Teeth, bone fragments, something. The complete absence of any trace is the detail that makes the official story fall apart for me.
I agree. I think it was arson. I think it was the Mafia-adjacent threat made real, and I think the truth got buried along with a lot of other things that were buried in mid-century West Virginia.
And the photo from 1967?
Is haunting. That's the word. It's just haunting. Someone knew something and either couldn't or wouldn't say it plainly.
And took it with them.
And took it with them. The Sodder children. Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jennie, and Betty. 5 kids who either died in a fire on Christmas Eve 1945 or, possibly unthinkably, were taken and never came home.
Their parents never stopped looking. Their siblings never stopped looking. And to this day, officially, no one knows.
This one hit differently than Sam Shepard, I have to say.
It hits different because it's children, and because the parents are so clearly just devastated and determined in equal measure. George and Jennie Sodder deserved answers. They never got them.
If you want to go down this rabbit hole, and fair warning, you will lose an evening, there are great write-ups on this case, and the Smithsonian Magazine did a feature on it that is worth reading.
We'll try to link it in the description.
We will try. We're still figuring out the description box.
We are very much still figuring out the description box.
Thanks for being here for episode 13, everyone. If last week's Sam Shepard episode was your introduction to us, welcome. You picked a wild 2 weeks to start.
The best 2 weeks.
Subscribe, leave a review, tell a friend. I'm Dylan.
I'm Cindy.
And this, Christmas Eve,
Maybe double check your ladder is where you left it.
just a thought.